This is a true story. On a cold February afternoon in 1991, at Sealand of the Pacific in Canada, a young marine trainer named Keltie Byrne stepped onto the edge of a pool that held three of the ocean's most powerful predators: Tilikum, Nootka IV, and Haida II. She had no way of knowing that within minutes, she would be fighting for her life in front of horrified onlookers, and that her final moments would forever change how the world viewed killer whales in captivity. Keltie was only 21, a gifted swimmer, a devoted trainer, and someone who believed deeply in the bond between human and animal. That belief, tested in a matter of seconds, collided with the unyielding truth of the wild, a truth that would leave a permanent scar on the history of marine parks. What happened in that pool was not a staged act, not an accident for entertainment. It was a deadly encounter that still sparks debate decades later. And once you hear what unfolded, you may never look at orcas the same way again.
You're watching New Wildlife documentary, and before we begin, I want to ask you, if you were there that day, watching from the stands, would you have been able to keep your eyes on the water, or would you have turned away? Tell us in the comments, and let's see how many of you could watch this true story until the very end.
The winter air carried the bite of salt and cold as it swept over Sealand of the Pacific. It was a gray February afternoon in 1991, the kind of day when the sky felt close enough to touch, and the waves beyond the harbor moved with a slow, measured rhythm. Inside the marine park, the bleachers stood half-filled with visitors, families wrapped in coats, children gripping paper cups of hot chocolate, their laughter mingling with the faint hum of the loudspeakers. On the main training platform, Keltie Byrne stood poised and confident. At just 21, she had the kind of athletic grace that came from years of competitive swimming, her posture relaxed but alert. Her dark hair was tucked neatly under a warm headband, her cheeks pink from the chill. She had only been working here for a few months, but already she had earned the respect of her colleagues for her patience and her way of quietly commanding the attention of the orcas. Beneath her, the water shimmered a deep, cold blue. Three massive shadows moved within it. Tilikum, the largest of the group, his black and white body slicing through the water with quiet authority. Nootka IV, a mature female with a watchful gaze. And Haida II, another female, often playful but unpredictable. Together, they were an awe-inspiring sight. 5, 6, even 7 tons of raw muscle and instinct circling in the confines of the concrete pool. Keltie leaned slightly over the edge, speaking softly to them, her breath forming clouds in the air. The orcas surfaced in turns, exhaling in powerful bursts that sent mist drifting into the cold breeze. She smiled as Tilikum's massive head broke the surface, his dark eye glinting with a mystery she had long since stopped trying to solve. From the stands, it looked serene, a young trainer at ease with the giants of the sea. But in the staff's quiet conversations, there were reminders, warnings even. They've never been fully trained, especially when they're together. You have to watch them every second. Keltie had heard it before. She respected it. But respect wasn't the same as fear, and she refused to let unease overshadow the connection she believed was possible. In just moments, the stillness of this ordinary day would shatter.
If you were Keltie, would you feel confident standing at the edge of the pool with 3 powerful predators circling below? Tell us what you think in the comments.
It happened in an instant, so fast that, at first, no one realized anything was wrong. Keltie had been moving along the wet edge of the platform, adjusting a training rope when her foot found a slick patch of algae. The slip was silent, almost graceful, and for a split second, she was weightless. Then came the sharp slap of her body hitting the cold water. From the stands, a few gasps escaped, followed by nervous laughter. Some thought it was part of the routine, an unplanned splash for added excitement. But the trainers on the platform knew better. Their eyes locked on the water's surface, scanning for movement. Beneath the pool's glassy sheen, 3 dark shapes had already shifted course. Tilikum's massive frame cut through the water like a torpedo, the 2 females close behind. To a casual observer, it might have looked like curiosity. To the staff, it was something else entirely. An unspoken agreement between the animals. An instinct awakened. Keltie surfaced near the center of the pool, her eyes wide and her breath short from the shock of the icy water. A quick inhale, a push toward the platform. She didn't scream, not yet. One of her colleagues crouched low, tossing a life ring toward her. But before she could reach it, a swell rose beside her, and the smooth black curve of Tilikum's head emerged. The contact was sudden, powerful jaws closing around her foot, not crushing, but holding. She kicked instinctively, breaking free for a moment, her head breaking the surface again. This time she shouted, her voice cracking. "Help me!" The sound shattered the illusion for the crowd. Parents clutched their children, whispers turning into cries. Another trainer threw a rope, urging her to grab it. But every stroke she made toward safety was met with another obstruction. An orca sliding across her path, forcing her back into open water. A second time she surfaced, gasping hard, her hair plastered to her face. For the first time, fear was written across her features. And then, in a rush of white water, she was pulled under again. The pool erupted with frantic movement, the trainers yelling orders, the audience frozen between disbelief and horror. The turning point had come, and there would be no undoing it.
If you were one of Keltie's colleagues, what would you have done in that moment? Jumped in, thrown more lines, or called for emergency backup? Share your thoughts below.
The water churned violently, froth boiling in the center of the pool. Every eye was fixed on the chaos, searching for the dark shape of Keltie amid the black and white bodies that darted and spun around her. She broke the surface once more, her arms flailing as she tried to keep her head above water. Her gasp was ragged, desperate, each breath stolen from the cold air before a wave closed over her again. In her eyes, there was no more confusion, only raw, unfiltered terror. A trainer on the platform dropped to their knees, extending a long pole toward her. "Grab it, Keltie!" he shouted. For a heartbeat, it seemed she might reach it. Then Tilikum surged upward beside her, his enormous head rising like a wall of muscle and force. A powerful sweep of his tail sent a sheet of water over the platform, drenching the rescuers and driving Keltie backward into deeper water. Nootka IV circled close, her dorsal fin slicing the surface as if cutting off escape routes. Haida II darted in from the other side, her bulk pushing a swell that rocked Keltie further from safety. The 3 orcas moved with unnerving coordination, not frenzied, but deliberate, as though they understood exactly how to keep her from the platform. Keltie managed another desperate burst toward the edge, her arms striking the water in strong, practiced strokes. For an instant, hope surged through the trainers watching. Then, in one seamless motion, Tilikum dove beneath her, his body twisting as his jaws closed around her leg. The sound that followed was not a scream. It was the sudden absence of her voice, replaced by the deep roar of displaced water as she vanished beneath the surface. The audience erupted into cries and shouts, children clinging to their parents, some too shocked to look away. Bubbles rose where she had gone under. Then the surface stilled for a moment. Trainers called her name, their voices straining to be heard over the pounding of their own hearts. The silence was worse than the splashing. It was the silence of uncertainty, of a moment too long without movement. Then, without warning, the pool erupted again. Keltie's face broke the surface, pale and gasping, her arms clawing toward the rope thrown her way. She managed to brush it with her fingertips before another sleek body intercepted her path, rolling sideways, blocking her line. The minutes stretched into an eternity. Every attempt to reach her was thwarted, every plan undone by the sheer mass and precision of the animals in the water. The trainers were faced with a cruel paradox. They could not enter the pool without risking another life, yet watching from the platform felt like surrender. One final time, Keltie's head emerged, her mouth opening as though to shout, but the words never came. Tilikum's shadow rose beneath her, and with a surge of white water, she was gone, pulled into the depths where the crowd could no longer see. The pool settled into an uneasy ripple. The only sound left was the pounding of the trainers' footsteps as they ran for more equipment, knowing every second that passed was one they could never get back. The pool was no longer a place of wonder. It had become a stage of grim reality. Trainers and staff moved with frantic precision, voices sharp over the intercom, calling for emergency protocols. Life rings, ropes, and poles were thrown into the water, their bright colors stark against the dark, shifting shapes below. But the orcas did not scatter. They circled slowly, deliberately, their massive bodies gliding just beneath the surface as if guarding something unseen. Each time a rescuer tried to reach further in, the sweep of a tail or the sudden roll of a dorsal fin forced them back. Minutes passed like hours. No one on the platform could say how long Keltie had been under. Every second without her felt heavier, a silent countdown only the water could keep. The tension was suffocating, an invisible weight pressing on everyone's chest. A trainer crouched low, scanning the water, praying for any sign of movement. The surface rippled, then broke, just for a moment, as a pale hand appeared, fingers reaching toward the light. Gasps erupted from the crowd, hope surging through the rescuers. But before anyone could react, Tilikum's enormous head rose beside it, the hand disappearing once more in a swirl of white foam. The audience's energy shifted from shock to dread. Parents shielded their children's eyes, pulling them away from the front rows. Others stood frozen, unable to turn from the grim spectacle. The sound of crying carried through the stadium, blending with the harsh blasts of the trainers' whistles. One senior staff member barked into his radio, demanding the water gates be prepared, an attempt to separate the orcas. But Sealand's pool was not designed for swift isolation, and the process dragged on. Below, the animals continued their unbroken pattern, as if the humans above did not exist. Another minute, another eternity. When the water finally parted again, it was not with the force of life, but with the stillness of surrender. Keltie's body floated just beneath the surface, limp, her hair drifting in the current. The trainers on the platform leaned in, desperate to pull her free. But even in that moment, the orcas stayed close, their presence a barrier no one dared cross. It took coordinated distraction, multiple trainers pounding the water on the opposite side of the pool, before Tilikum and the others drifted far enough for a hook and pole to secure her. Slowly, carefully, she was lifted toward the edge, the water streaming from her wetsuit in silent cascades. As her body cleared the surface, the crowd fell into absolute silence. The whistles stopped. The splashing ceased. Only the low hum of the park's filtration system filled the void. On the deck, attempts at resuscitation began immediately. Compressions, breaths, the desperate rhythm of those who refuse to accept the inevitable. But deep down, every rescuer knew the truth. Too much time had passed. Keltie Byrne was gone. And in the still waters of the pool, the orcas moved on as if nothing had happened. News of the tragedy spread with the speed of a breaking wave. By nightfall, Keltie Byrne's name was on every television screen and in the headlines of every Canadian paper. Her photograph, bright-eyed, smiling, was paired with words like freak accident and orca attack. But for those who had been there, it wasn't a headline. It was a memory they couldn't escape. Sealand of the Pacific, once a modest but beloved attraction, was transformed overnight into the center of a national reckoning. Reporters camped outside its gates, cameras trained on the empty parking lot, while staff moved quietly inside, avoiding questions they had no answers for. Visitors stopped coming. School groups canceled trips. The laughter that had once echoed through the stands was replaced by the hum of silence. Public outrage grew as details emerged. 3 orcas kept together in a confined tank, no emergency partition system, and years of warnings from trainers about unpredictable behavior when the animals were in close quarters. Advocacy groups seized the moment, demanding the immediate end to orca captivity. Ordinary citizens, too, found their voices, questioning why such powerful creatures were kept in enclosures barely large enough to let them swim in a straight line. For Keltie's family, the loss was sharper than any public debate. She had been a daughter, a sister, a friend, full of potential, with a life just beginning. Now, her absence was a void no statement or memorial could fill. They kept away from the cameras, grieving in private, while the world dissected the circumstances of her death. In boardrooms, Sealand's future was sealed. Less than 18 months after the incident, the park announced it would close permanently. The orcas, Tilikum, Nootka IV, and Haida II, were sent to other marine facilities, their departure as quiet as their arrival had once been. Yet the closure brought no comfort to those who had watched that February afternoon unfold. The image of Keltie in the water, fighting to reach the surface, lingered like a shadow that could not be erased. For many, the lesson was clear. The ocean's predators could be trained, but never truly tamed. Sealand was gone, but the questions it raised would echo far longer than its walls had stood. In the years that followed, the story of Keltie Byrne became more than a tragedy. It became a warning. To those who had worked alongside her, she was not defined by the way she died, but by the way she lived. Committed, compassionate, unwilling to treat the animals in her care as mere props in a performance. But the hard truth lingered. No matter the bond between trainer and orca, no matter the hours spent in training pools or the moments of apparent trust, there was always a line that could not be crossed. The ocean had shaped these animals over millions of years, carving instincts so deep they could never be erased. Confinement did not change that. It only pressed those instincts into silence until the silence finally broke. Tilikum, Nootka IV, and Haida II moved on to new enclosures, but the shadow of that February afternoon followed them. Each splash of their tails, each surface breath, carried the memory of the life lost in their company. To some, they were killers. To others, victims of a system that had forced them into a world they never chose. Keltie's name faded from the headlines, but among trainers, it was spoken with quiet reverence. Her death was a turning point. Proof that respect for the wild must go beyond admiration. That safety measures could never be an afterthought, and that some distances were never meant to be closed. In the end, her story was not about cruelty or vengeance. It was about truth. The truth that the sea's giants are not ours to command. They are not attractions to be packaged for applause. They are sovereign beings, bound to a world far older and vaster than ours. And that truth remains unbroken. Keltie Byrne's final moments were not defined by weakness, but by the brutal reminder that some forces in nature cannot and should not be controlled. Her life was a testament to courage and compassion, but also a cautionary echo to every trainer, every park, and every spectator who has ever stood in awe of the ocean's giants. The water holds memories far longer than we do. That February afternoon still ripples through time, not just in the minds of those who were there, but in the way we now question the very idea of keeping predators confined for our entertainment. The orcas returned to their silent circuits in other tanks, but the truth remained. Captivity changes the body, but not the heart of the wild. Perhaps the real tribute to Keltie is not in mourning alone, but in listening to the lesson she left behind. That respect for nature must be more than admiration. It must be action.
What about you? After hearing her story, do you believe these powerful creatures belong in tanks? Or should they return to the vast oceans that shaped them? Share your thoughts below, because this conversation is far from over.